Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this Liquid and deviceTRUST hands-on training. We'll start off in a minute or two, giving the last people the possibility to join us. If you're not in a hurry, grab a glass of water. We'll kick off in a minute or two. Yeah, still see some people dropping in. So welcome everybody. We're about to kick off. So welcome everybody to this Liquid and deviceTRUST training. I think it's pretty special. Two companies working together to deliver the best end-to-end experience on Azure Virtual Desktop, which is of course pretty complex. So to kick it off, to start off with introductions, my name is Nico Ziek. I'm the guy from Liquid today, and on the other side is my dearest friend, who's from deviceTRUST, who's willing to help, Mr. Sven Janssen.
Hi, everyone.
Good afternoon, Sven. So together we'll give you the first insights about how to manage an Azure Virtual Desktop environment. So usually we do the hands-on trainings. These are the slides from the hands-on trainings from Liquid itself. The same is for deviceTRUST, but we have a very nice combination together. So I will do the introductions for how you can use Liquid. I will show you some live examples, how to build it up, how to run a deployment in the easiest way. And it will take me approximately 45-50 minutes to do so, perhaps an hour. After that, the guys from deviceTRUST will take over to do their part. And after this session, we'll send a follow-up mail for everybody to do deeper training, because of course we can't cover it all in just an hour each. We try to deliver the best. We don't want to make this a webinar. We actually want to learn you something. If you have any questions, you can best do that in the chat or reach out to us via email. And we'll see where it takes, because it's for us also first very exciting not to do webinars anymore, but just to do a training or give you all the insights. So sit back, relax, enjoy yourself. Today there's nothing hands-on about it. Usually it is, so you're lucky. So here's the agenda from the Liquid part today. So what are we going to do? Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you a little bit where can Liquid help in Azure Virtual Desktop. Because setting up and managing an Azure Virtual Desktop environment is especially complex. There are a couple of good solutions to create an image, which we are probably also, we think, one of them. And by the way, the session is recorded, so if things are going a little bit too fast, you can request us to send out the recording to you guys to review it all back. Then we're going to create or explain how to create an Azure Virtual Desktop master template. I'm going to show you some examples how we can trigger a deployment within Liquid Workspace. But then creating an image is not the most complex part in Azure Virtual Desktop. It's about managing your applications. And this is where the power of deviceTRUST and Liquid will be combined. Liquid will deploy all your applications in every scenario and every environment, while deviceTRUST makes them contextual aware. We can do that a little bit, but deviceTRUST is truly powerful in delivering the optimal contextual security on your Azure Virtual Desktop environment. So I think it's really cool to show you this. And then, of course, it's important, step 3, connect your users. So our training part from the Liquid part consists of 3 steps. Step 1, create a template. Step 2, how to deploy your applications, using specifically now our setup store to create an evergreen environment within Liquid Workspace. And then connect your users. So what is a connector and how do you do the single sign-on into your Azure Virtual Desktop environment? At the end of the day, the whole result should be that we have an end-to-end Azure Virtual Desktop experience just managed by 3 components. Of course, Azure Virtual Desktop, Liquit Workspace, and deviceTRUST. Then you have all your applications in there, you have single sign-on, and you secured your environment using deviceTRUST. Just 3 simple solutions. So to give you all where it starts, Liquit is famous and started all off with this story about smart icons. So what we try to do, we try to decouple the apps from what's going on the back end. It sounds really simple, and in a later picture I'll explain you what it does, but it's really important to gain flexibility for IT solution, for IT people, for IT solutions by itself, of course. We're trying to make the shift seamless to Azure Virtual Desktop. So the biggest thing what's holding us back to migrate to something new is always how do we implement it. And today we're going to work with an example of a smart icon, which will launch on local Excel if it's available, and a centralized one on Azure Virtual Desktop whenever it's required. So we can make that transition seamless. Application settings will be context-based. So in some scenarios they will be available, and some scenarios they won't be available. This is also where deviceTRUST will step in. And with our smart icons, we enhance the user experience for just having a single interface. It's really important. So if you're working with Citrix, if you're working with VMware, if you're working with multiple solutions, which most big companies do, you are bound and tied to multiple interfaces, which is extremely confusing for end users. So what do we mean with decoupling the apps? Well, users have a variety of devices on the left-hand side. They all go into the same portal, our Liquit Workspace. And the Liquit Workspace is pretty easy for that. You just simply log in with your Azure AD credentials, or local AD if you prefer that, or whatever authentication mechanism you wish to choose. There you see all your applications. Within all your applications, there can be anything. Local apps, Azure Virtual Desktop apps, and everything. But the thing is, you see a variety of backends, and all big companies work with local apps and centralized apps and virtual apps and software as a service apps, and we can combine them into one single solution. So just to give you the idea, and also to tell you more about what Liquit really is. Liquit is a deployment solution, so we can create the images on Azure Virtual Desktop, but also do that on your local device. We are an application management solution, so we install, configure, and manage every single application there is. Liquit is also a single sign-on solution, so we'll provide you with single sign-on into a variety of services like Azure Virtual Desktop, like software as a service apps, like Citrix. We work with connectors to read out what applications are available and just drag them into Liquit Workspace, easy as that. And for the end user, they see an icon, and I will take what application is a cool one. Let's take today the Photoshop. I see Photoshop is in there. So you are working on big Photoshop material. You're in the office, you have a laptop, you probably just click on the icon and Liquit will launch Photoshop on your local device. It works perfectly. But now you're going to work from home. You're moving home, and then all of a sudden you still need to work in that same big Photoshop thing. And then a local experience wouldn't be great. So with our smart icons, you simply select the exact same icon again, but then it will redirect you to Azure Virtual Desktop seamlessly, where Liquit has built up the image, installed the application, started the applications, and just fires up. So with single sign-on experience. And in the evening, you work from your personal tablet. You go to the exact same icon, and Liquit will yet again launch a virtual desktop session. As an end user, I don't have to think about it anymore. So we try to be that end-to-end application management platform to deliver any application in any circumstance in the most suitable way. This is more about the high-level part of Liquit. So then the training starts. Typically, this is the first thing you probably want to do inside your Azure Virtual Desktop environment, to download the agent. With the hands-on experience, we already would do this, so we'll skip this for now. I have already the agent installed, but the agent is a really important part of our starting point of deploying an Azure Virtual Desktop environment. So that's why I didn't skip this specific slide. So it's recorded so you can always watch it back. Then step 1 first, how to create an Azure Virtual Desktop master template, which is really important because there are a good couple solutions. We all know Nerdio, which is great in scaling and deploying devices. We all know the Microsoft stack itself from Intune and Autopilot, which can be really complex and not suitable for Azure Virtual Desktop itself. So you're down to scripting and playing around. So we try to automate that. We try to make that as sweet and sound as possible. Where can Liquit help? Well, Liquit will support, and this is really important to understand, on the endpoints. First, to start off with the left-hand side. We will deliver a portal on a Windows device, and we are able to run and broker a session to Azure Virtual Desktop using HTML5 or using our agent with a native client. Liquit can make the selection for you, so you're not longer looking into how can we get to the Azure Virtual Desktop environment. On Azure Virtual Desktop, Liquit will create a golden image for you, or create a master template image for you, where you can get it from the standard template repository or machine operating system already. And then we will inject specific settings inside a live session. So you can install just bare applications and install your settings, configure your settings like homepage for Google Chrome within your session. So it's easy to maintain your golden image. Of course, we're not going to cover all the scenarios in this training. If you want to learn more about what Liquit truly can do, we have full hands-on trainings for the Liquit solution itself. So you can go to our website, liquit.com/events, and sign up for a training. Of course, I will send up a follow-up email about this, where you can read it all back. So what kind of master images does Liquit support? Well, we can create a golden image, but then automate the process. So you can select it from the catalog from Microsoft. So what is it called? The Azure Marketplace images. We can work with the extension using Microsoft Bicep, for instance. There is also a good session from one of the community leaders about that. So Liquit will run using extension, or do it best of both worlds. Lifecycle management with the user interface from Liquit Workspace. We're all about creating your seamless Liquit Workspace image or Azure Virtual Desktop image without doing the hard and complex scripting. And with our setup store, we're going to automate the lifecycle of your application, so they're updated always. It's an evergreen situation. Well, let's dive in some of the scenarios. How do they work? How can you set them up? And most of our customers choose to use the extension one. They all have their ups and downs, and the choice is yours. And this is just a selection of what we can support. But basically, let's start off with the golden image. What you typically will do and what you can do with Liquit is go to the image for Marketplace. The bigger advantage of that is Microsoft will maintain those Marketplace images. The first thing you're probably going to do is, and it can be by hand, install the Liquit agent. Liquit agent will automatically trigger a deployment, and then you need to capture the image and deploy it to your session hosts. The thing is, every setting will be inside that image. So if you need to change something inside that image, you need to update all the session hosts again, but it's a really simple process. So Liquit will take control over the full deployments. Then using the extension, then you can automate it. So the cool part about that is, let's just start an image at a session host, which is already there. It's a bare image. It will trigger a PowerShell extension. Keep in mind, there are just 2 extensions allowed, and Microsoft has the 2 of them already in use. So it's going to be a custom or a bicep PowerShell script which you need to trigger. You need to set it up yourself. That will automatically install the Liquit agent. That will automatically trigger the deployment, and your session host is ready. The difference between the 2 is the first one will be creating a golden image, and the second one will create an image on a session host. So it's not longer the golden image. And this process will make sure that you have, every time you deploy a new session host, have a full operating session host. And the third one, the best of both worlds, is the combination of the 2. You get the image from the Marketplace, you will install the Liquit agent, and this is going to be your golden image. Your agent is already in there with some of the settings. We're going to capture the image, and then we're going to deploy the custom image to the session host. And as soon as the session host will fire up, it will deploy and run the Liquit deployment. The advantage of this is whenever we sync up with applications coming from our setup store, we get an evergreen. So if we redeploy the session host, we don't have to recreate the image again and send it out to all the session hosts. We simply have to redeploy the session host. Then the Liquit deployment will be run automatically. And with native apps, so no app fees, you have an evergreen application landscape. So we auto maintain the bunch. So these are just 3 scenarios Liquit will support. And that is all up to you how to do so. So now I will go into a Liquid environment to start off with setting up a deployment. And it's pretty easy. I prepared this all, and usually we do this by hand, but here we go into the Liquid environment. We go into the lab. I'll show this live, how we configure a context-aware image for this. So this is our machine. I hope I typed the password right. No, guess not. Here we go. And we prepared something. So I'll first download, first of all, go into the identities, contexts. So we've prepared a context. And the context usually works with a filter. This one is now a context a catch-all. But with a filter, you can usually select your devices, for instance, your Azure Virtual Desktop session host, to gather them to trigger a deployment. For now, it's a catch-all, so my device is already known inside Liquid Workspace. I'm going to show you this. My device is already here, so it's good to go to trigger a deployment. And I am a member of this specific context already. So this is an autofill context. What we'll do, I'll select the AVD deployment. It's already there. So we've created a simple AVD deployment. I've created a context where you can simply add your Azure Virtual Desktop session host to trigger a deployment. And that is really great. So we can go to the deployment, and I'll show you what's in the deployment. So creating a deployment within Liquid Workspace is really simple. Just to create, and I can create a dummy one, and it will simply ask you to create and select a bunch of packages. This is already done inside my Azure Virtual Desktop environment. So there is already one, and it's going to be the Liquid training dummy package. So this is a dummy package what will deploy a notepad file, and will simply do a simple one. What do we want to do with this? Well, we want to install this application. So we have a good couple of options within Liquid Workspace. You can distribute and stage a couple of applications inside Liquid Workspace. You can install the applications, you can prepare and uninstall them. So the choice is yours. Confirm. You see now we have set up a deployment to install a specific set of packages, and you can add as many packages as you want. So we've prepared a couple of packages inside this, and for this we have the Liquid training dummy, which will create a directory, upload a file, and does a little wait. The whole thing is just to show you how easy it is to set up a deployment within Liquid Workspace. I'm currently running inside a virtual machine, which will trigger the whole thing. So now I'm going to trigger the Liquid deployment. So first thing you usually want to do is inside the Azure Virtual Desktop environment, select the Liquid Bootstrapper. I'll go to the Liquid Bootstrapper. So I will download the Liquid Bootstrapper. I'll do this live. It will show you a prompt in order to look at these files to start. Do you like to start a deployment? So now I'm going to start a deployment, which will trigger the Liquid Bootstrapper. This is usually automated. And now you see that we're configuring a Liquid Workspace agent automatically inside your Azure Virtual Desktop environment. It's triggering the deployment in a good couple of seconds. And this is how easy it is to deploy a full Liquid Azure Virtual Desktop environment. So I'm going to log on right now. This is usually all hidden, but you probably understand that one. And now the deployment is already in run. So now silently on the back end, our deployment is run. This is all the steps you need to take to create a Liquid Workspace deployment. And here we go. Now it will deploy the packages inside your Liquid Workspace environment. And of course, we can show you where the applications are. But this is how we can create the golden images to deploy all your applications. Just use the Liquid Bootstrapper, which in it will deploy everything for you, fully automated. And let me check where it deployed something. That I didn't check. Liquid training. Here's the dummy app we installed with the Liquid dummy application as requested. All the applications can be seamlessly installed using this process with Liquid Workspace. So this is the first application we have created. And now we want to go into step 2, setting up your applications. So I'll close this for a good second. because I need to speed up the process a little bit, of course. And can I make this big while it pops away? Here we go. So Liquit has a setup store. We try to make things really easy for you guys. So the first thing is we have set up our agent inside Liquit Workspace. It deployed all my applications, but now you need to have more applications. And I am pretty much done with all the packaging over and over and over again, which I can completely agree. So Liquit has created a setup store with 4,000 applications with wizards for injecting their business logic. So you can simply select an application from our setup store, add it to your deployment, and it's there. You don't have to do anything. I will do one application in a good couple of seconds. I'll do it right now. Why not? So I can go to our setup store, so manage, to our connectors, Liquit setup store, go to my resources, and now I want to install my Google Chrome inside my image. So what I will do, Google Chrome. I've here my Google Chrome. It's updated February 14th, so yesterday, Valentine's Day. By the way, I hope that everybody had a great Valentine's Day. I'll select the package, I'll update the existing one, and here you see the security information. So it's also important to have good security information about your packages. It will scan for viruses, malware, if the hash code is still correct, and everything else in that. So I think it's okay. So instead of doing it all by hand, I simply want to have my application enterprise ready. I don't want to be bothered with all the stupid questions over and over again, because this is something you have to do really often. And here is how we try to create an evergreen situation. So what we do with this, we can select the features we like and we don't like, and we're going to auto create a package out of this. So liquit.com is my favorite homepage. You should all visit it. On import versions from previous versions, and I think my configuration is done. What do I want to do with this? Well, currently there are no entitlements required. Finish. So the whole package will now be downloaded from the setup store. It will create all the Liquit installation configuration tasks required for this specific app. Based on the answer file, we're going to create a transform file for your applications. So it's enterprise ready. We don't have to change anything anymore. And the good thing with this is, if there is an update within this package, on our setup store site, Liquit will reuse the same template again to re-download that application. Whenever I now decide to add Google Chrome to this package, so I can do that to the image, Chrome, here it is, LSS stands for Liquit Setup Store. We're going to do the installation. My image is now up to date. And every time Liquit will update the application, it will be automatically being recommitted into this deployment. So if you use the third option of redeploying your session host every day, we have a golden image with the Liquit agent in it, and every time you redeploy your session hosts after upscaling them, what Liquit also can handle, will automatically update all your apps. So now you have that evergreen situation inside your application landscape. I think this is really helpful, but it's of course up to you guys to decide. And now we already have created an application on the Liquit Setup Store, and we're gonna create another one. So I'm gonna create one more. And this is to help you guys to understand a little bit more, because we're going to the next phase, and this is going to be connect your users. To connect our users, we use a connector. But the first thing we need to do is set up the connector just right. This is something we can do pretty easy. Remote desktop. Here's the Microsoft Remote Desktop agent, which you always want to deploy on your endpoints using Azure Virtual Desktop. I can simply select that one, and this is the insider one. I don't want to have the insider, so I want to have the remote desktop, then a 64-bit. I'm going to create a package out of this, updating the existing packages. Next. And I don't want any entitlements, so you can configure the package again, public properties. How do you want to configure it? For now, it's just fine. Next, and finish. This is important. This is also updated automatically, and there is an error, which is always cool. Next, next, next. Always cool and good training. You want to have this application always up to date. If the user will click on an Azure Virtual Desktop session, Liquit will first deploy the remote desktop client, then start up the session for you. We do that with the connector. So now we have this package. Nobody is entitled to use this package. And what we do with this, it's all hidden. We have created the connector. So we already have set up the remote desktop. We already set up the image. We redeployed it, and there are a couple of options where you can do that. It's all about application. We can do so much more around applications, by the way. So if you want to learn more about how to set up your applications, please feel free to reach out. But I can't explain this during this session time. And then we're going to create a connected to Azure Virtual Desktop. This is crucial for the experience for end users. So we have created the image, we deployed our environment, and we have set up the session host, and now we have set up Liquit to connect to Azure Virtual Desktop. We're going to read out all the applications that are available over there. And to do so, we also have created an Azure Virtual Desktop single sign-on account. You can use the current logged on credentials to enforce the users to use the current logon credential to have single sign-on. But here we're talking about how to use this is the remote desktop client. So this will select the users to always, if we sync the apps, create a package out of this, always install the remote desktop client, which is updated automatically. So now not only the applications on the backend are updated automatically, if we have automated the image creation, also on the end user portion, we've made sure that the user will always use the right version of the right remote desktop version with single sign-on into Azure Virtual Desktop. On Azure Virtual Desktop, we've created, of course, an application ID with a client secret to let Liquit access the Graph API to read out what's available. And here you can see use the web client when no agent is present. And this is truly unique for Liquid Workspace, truly unique in the world. So Liquid can use the client, but if there is no client, we'll fall back into HTML5 seamlessly. So this will work perfectly into your optimal bring your own device world. The users can still work, still use single sign-on. I'll save the settings. We've told Liquid what do we want to sync out of this. Now there are a good couple of apps, which I'm going to create now. So now I am browsing my Azure Virtual Desktop environment to see which applications I want to use. These are published at Azure Virtual Desktop and we're connected to that, and I'm going to select my Excel in this case. I'm going to create a package. For who is this app? Well, this app is going to be published to an end user. On my workspace, it can be in the start menu, confirm. I am the admin, I'm logged on as an admin. Of course, you can use device-based selection, context-based selection, a user-based selection, group-based, a set of groups. The choice is yours. Now we've synced an application into Liquid Workspace from Azure Virtual Desktop. So we know not only the backend, also the front end in this case. And we have created this specific package. And this specific package will do what I told Liquid to do. Install remote desktop client first. Then open Azure Virtual Desktop and use the single sign-on account. And then you see try remote desktop client first and otherwise fall back. There should be an application now, and I need to check which one on my desktop, which is Azure Virtual Desktop, which is actually this one. So I'm going to click it. Let's see if it works. Now it's going to install the remote desktop client first. It will take a good couple of seconds, of course. But I have the right version. And then it will start the session into Azure Virtual Desktop. Or it should. I have another account already connected to this, I see. This is my oopsie. I can probably use my own account. This is something I did not prepare, of course. Let's use my personal account, something went wrong. So now it didn't fire up. But here now we get to a confusing part. I started off talking about smart icons. Now we see two icons, and then I was trying to start up the app and it will fail probably. Here we go. And this is my stupid fault. So we talked about using these smart icons. And within our environment, we have now two Excel icons, which is not really wishful. We want to make these things context aware and just show the users one icon. and one icon to get all your scenarios to create things who are content aware. Because the majority of the users will simply log on, and I have here my demo environment. No, I don't want to have access to this one right now. I have only one Excel icon in here. That Excel icon will do some of the actions. And this is where the power of Liquit is. If you're now running on a full desktop experience inside Azure Virtual Desktop, and you will click on the Excel icon in your portal or your start menu, it will figure out, oh, wait a minute, we have Excel installed. Might also be that you're on an Apple device and that your IT administrator thinks it's a good idea to provide Excel on your endpoint. Well, we're going to only launch Excel if it's physically available and on your iOS device. Then it might be that the organization is in a migration scenario. So this is a smart icon. We tell the users not to worry about it anymore. We'll launch Excel on your local system. And if you are remote and you're a BYOD user, you're going to start Excel only if you have a secure device on Azure Virtual Desktop. It's the same icon again, the same environment again. And finally, we go to Excel Online. This is what we call a smart icon. We can make smart selections, what will happen where and when. Within those icons, and I think that it's really important to understand, Liquit is able to set up everything. And there is also where we enhance our security with deviceTRUST. Because it's not about setting up an image. This is easy. I can create a template from Azure, from Microsoft Azure and deploy the Liquit agent. I can deploy all the apps within just 10 minutes. It's not that complex. Deploy to your session host and your environment is up and running. It's about how do my apps operate for my end user. It's all about managing your apps. So what we try to do with Liquit Workspace, what we seriously try to do is like install Excel completely clean, nothing in it. We strip out everything we don't need and inject the settings, like I told in the hybrid experience, inject the settings on demand. So we install the package Excel, but to use Excel, we need to look at files, we need our office styles, we need to have updates, we need to have knowledge, and we need to have our printers. Based on the context, we will figure out what do we need to deploy right now for the right end user. So am I at location A? I want to have the printers of location A. These are not installed and configured inside my Azure Virtual Desktop environment. We will create the settings on demand, that the user has always the right printer, always the right drive mappings, always the right office styles. And therefore, it's really easy to get your applications up to date. If there is an update, we simply need to add the patch, which is automatically deployed into your image. And as soon as you redeploy a session host, your whole environment is up to date again. This is how easy it is to create a Liquit package. So we already have created the connector, but just to give you an overview what it does. This is how we usually do it. You go to Manage, Automation, create a connector to Azure Virtual Desktop. Liquit will support the ARM and the non-ARM versions of Azure Virtual Desktop. So if you already have an Azure Virtual Desktop environment up and running, we can use them in conjunction. The coolest part after that is you can also do that to your Citrix environment. Also create a connector and then create a smart icon, which what I will do later. We have created the package Excel, entitled it to the admin and selected on Finish, where the application is right now. But as explained, we had the problem with 2 Excel icons, and this is not useful. This is what all the other vendors also will do, create 2 icons and let the users select what they need. Do we really want users to have to think about what they need to do with something? This is the majority of the screw-ups. What is holding us back with that? If you do it like this, if you have 2 icons, the users need to think. And if you change the parameter, the users get confused. And the next thing they will do is call the service desk, start complaining. The result of that is you don't do the innovation anymore. You refrain from your innovation of getting a new technology enhanced. So what we're going to do, we're going to combine those 2 icons into one single application and make them smart. So here is explained how we do that. Now, I'm going to create one icon out of this. So I will go into the workspace, I'm going to my lab, I will go into my favorite Excel icon, and under the Excel are all these options, already explained to what they do already. And to combine Azure Virtual Desktop to this, I will do a launch package. I'm going to trigger the package from Azure Virtual Desktop Excel. And I'm going to call it AVD Excel. We already have created the image, so it's already up and running, and I can play around with what scenario will happen where and when. Now you can imagine that if you have a current Citrix environment, you're going to drag out all your Citrix applications. But Liquid is easy to create your workspace deployment, and I can do so much around this, like deploy virtual disk, connect a drive mapping, connect a printer, fully context aware, what will happen where and when, that I can now simply add another environment to this. So now I have Excel, and I want to try to do everything. So here's the process. Liquid has integrated DTAP staging mechanism, so I can upgrade this into production. So you can simply test whether or not you made a little oopsie. And if I made a little oopsie, I can revert it back to previous stages. It will always create a snapshot. Just ask me to create a snapshot. Is it okay? So now what I now can do is go into the other one, manage. I will remove the entitlements on this package. So as an end user, I don't see this anymore. I will make it hidden. It doesn't matter for now. Confirm. So now the user only has one icon. And if I look at the icon, it's now a combination of the two. So what it will do, it will launch the Excel Azure Virtual Desktop one, which will give you an error, but also do install the remote desktop client. And this is what we call a smart icon, one icon to deploy it all. And it will give you the same error again, because I've triggered the error before, and this is not a good thing for me, bad preparation. But now we have one single icon for everything. For the end user, it's really easy. Now you can combine all your technologies with an evergreen Azure Virtual Desktop environment. Remove the duplicate again. And basically, this is how at Liquid we can set up a good end-to-end Liquid Workspace Azure Virtual Desktop environment. I know it went pretty fast, but are there at this point any questions? Because from our perspective, it's really easy. I don't see in the chat, as far as I see, any questions. So if you have any questions, just let me know right now. Otherwise, I will give it to Sven to give the introduction about deviceTRUST. If you want to learn more and go deeper into this, all this stuff, you can subscribe to the hands-on training, which will do the exact same thing, but then you're going to build everything I just showed you live to play around it with yourself. It's all prepared by Liquid. Today, I just wanted to tell you that we're able to create 3 different deployments from one solution. The choice is yours to gain optimal flexibility. That we're able to deploy, configure, and set up every single application there is inside Liquid Workspace. We showed you how to run a deployment easily, that it will create an image instantly. So there's no wait time, there's no complexity around that. It's really easy to do so. And then also, how do we connect to Azure Virtual Desktop for the users to create a universal front end? Well, with that, and I don't see any questions right now, I'm going to give it to my friend from deviceTRUST. Let me see if I can make him a presenter, attendees. And I will be here, of course, to enjoy the rest of the session. Sven, you're good to go to enjoy yourself.
Thank you very much, Nico. I hope I'm to be heard well.
Yeah, perfect from my side. So yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, hi from my side as well. This is Sven from deviceTRUST speaking, and I'm delighted to be in this session today as well, of course, because I really like what Liquid is doing with their suite, and I think there is a lot of advantage you can get with combining those two products, Liquid and deviceTRUST. What I'm going to show you today is how deviceTRUST can enrich your AVD environment, how it can add a security layer to your AVD environment, and of course as well, and this I like a lot about with the combination of Liquid and deviceTRUST, is to enrich the user experience as well. Because what Nico told you now is that Liquid does have a focus on simplicity and on making things better for the user. So the whole deployment is structured in a way that for the end user, and actually the end user is the one that counts for us, is everything needs to be quite simple, quite accessible, and still yet fulfill all those requirements about security, about compliance, and whatever restrictions you have in your business. So Liquit combines those two, and deviceTRUST combines those two as well. And I'm going to show you this in the next roughly 45 minutes. We do also, similar to Liquit, provide technical training. So if you are interested in getting deeper into deviceTRUST, there are certification trainings, there's technical trainings, there's update sessions on different topics. So if you're keen on that, get back to me. My contact details will be in the end. And again, as Nico already said, we are going to provide a follow-up with all those informations, with information how you can get access to licenses and all this. Okay. If you have any questions, please put them into the chat window. I might not be seeing it all the time, but Nico can give me a ping or something. Okay, so giving you, of course, a little overview about what deviceTRUST is, and I'm just switching back to the main slide again. So deviceTRUST is a German software vendor, and we work in the business of contextual security. So our aim is to deliver contextual information, and we're going to see what this is in a minute, into your environment to get contextual information from your users, from your devices during access, and execute certain controls based on that. And we're going to see what this is as well, but that's the key. So context is one and controls is the other one. Now, we're going to see what this means in the demo and in all this. So the basic idea behind deviceTRUST is that back in the days, so to say, in your digital workspace, and the digital workspace is what we care about. This can be desktops, applications, resources. This can be on your FAT client, in a remoting session, everywhere. Now in this webinar, it's all related to AVD. So your digital workspace is inside AVD. But back in the days, the digital workspace kind of looked like there was a user, and the user, she was sitting on a workstation inside your company building. She was logged in with her username, and everything was controlled based on her role. And the security was more or less provided by the walls around her and the network. No one could plug the computer in, and that was it. So that's the idea of the very old, very, very old role-based scenario. Now, deviceTRUST takes the whole thing to another level, and this is nothing new. Many vendors do it. We do it a bit different, and we're going to see that in a bit. So what we do is we add a second layer to the whole game, which we call contextual security. What's the reason for this? Now, the reason for this is that IT landscape changed. This is also nothing new. I'm not telling you anything new here. You all know that users work outside company buildings. They move around. They have different devices. They bring their private devices. They work from the train, from the airport, from cafes. They work during nighttime, during daytime. So work has become a lot more flexible than it used to be. deviceTRUST's approach to this is to recognize all those different situations that users might work in and deliver this information and make you available to control certain content based on those information. That's basically the idea. That's what we call contextual security. So we do extend the lock-on process, the existing role-based model, which will stay in place, and we add information to it to give you the power of controlling certain content. Now, deviceTRUST is a software-only solution. Getting back to Liquit, this means you can, of course, if you control your AVD environment with the great Liquit suite, then you can, of course, install deviceTRUST inside your AVD, having it roll out, having all the software components in place, configure it, and you're good to go already. deviceTRUST consists of 3 software components, which we're going to get to know in a minute. There is no database requirements, there is no appliances, there is no gateway ports, firewall ports to be opened and such. So this is just a very lean, software-only, inside your network software solution. We try to keep it simple in many ways, and just sticking with simple software products is one of our concepts. Now, told you already, deviceTRUST is about context and control. And then on the left-hand side of this diagram, we now see our idea of what context could be. First, it can, of course, be the identity of the user accessing something, your AVD session, your AVD applications, whatever. The identity can be the username, the user's email address, everything that's in some directory, everything that's in some lists, everything that you want to know about your user. So we can actually do, of course, take into account all those role-based informations and such, but we can extend this information to everything that is in some directory about the user. The next thing, endpoint, is actually what we focus on. So our focus is on the device the user is using, so the machine the user does have physical access to, and the information about that device during access to the digital workspace, to your environment, to your network. deviceTRUST is able to get roughly 400 data points from those devices. It differs a bit from the endpoints we have, so we support Windows endpoints, macOS, iOS, IGIL devices, and such. And it differs a bit because we're always using local APIs, but it's roughly 400 data points that we can get about the endpoint. And some data points might be security related. For example, is your firewall switched on or off? Is your local SSD encrypted? How is your password policy? Is the device connected to some network, which brings us to the next box into the network connection. So network connection is a big part of deviceTRUST as well. And this way we get all the information that we need to guarantee that the device is actually fulfilling your requirements. I'm going to tell a few stories about use cases and all this and how this will or could look in life later. And then we can use all sorts of external information as well. External information for us means that you can put some data somewhere, be it in a database, be it in a text file, in a share file, something. We can get that information and use it for your accesses, for your controls. So that's the information side. That's what we call the context. So just imagine your user logs onto AVD. You define which information will be gathered. If it's identity related, endpoint, network, external, whatever information you want to get, you create the set of information that's gathered, and that's considered the context of the user during access or of the access. Again, deviceTRUST is very simple structured, and we also we kind of take that principle to data simplicity or data scarcity, I think it can be called. So if you use deviceTRUST, we are not going to collect all the information and only use what you configured, but we only use the information that you actually configure. So if you do not want to get anything like firewall security information, we do not even collect it. Only the information that you collect that you need will be evaluated and will be used. Now, speaking of being used, that's the right-hand side of this diagram. This is what we actually can do, the actions that deviceTRUST can actually take. The first and most simple one is conditional access. So we can use all the information that we get to control access to a session. That's nothing new. Everyone does it. Everyone does conditional access. We add a little plus to conditional access, and I'm going to show you later what we mean by that plus, because we're doing things dynamically, we're doing things with a lot of information, we are doing things, just different. The next one is conditional application access, which means that we cannot only control access to the whole session, say to the whole AVD session, but we can also control what happens inside those sessions. So let's say you have an AVD session and your user is sitting at home and everything is fine. The user has full access inside that desktop. And now the user takes his laptop, moves to a cafe or something, and with some type of information, you recognize that the user is not at home anymore. The user is in an unsecure location or an unknown location. And then you might still want the user to be able to access AVD, but you might not want for some application to be available. Let's say SAP or some business critical application. We can do that, and we're going to see that in a minute. Conditional configuration is another thing we can do. So we can also configure things that are not necessarily security related, the printer management, drive management, and all those things. So all the APIs that Windows has for us, we can control. We can report everything. So all the data you gather, all the actions you do, we can report to systems like Splunk or whatever you use. Whatever has a REST API can be used, and I'm going to show you this later as well. And we can do something that's called external in action, which is kind of, well, the rest, so to say. We have a scripting engine. We can run VB scripts and PowerShell scripts, so you can actually trigger all the APIs you have. We have customers saying, well, okay, so we want in certain circumstances, we want those machines to send some information to the next switch and manage those ports or something. So very special use cases, not really in the core of deviceTRUST, but it can be done. So if there's something you might not find in the product now, we are quite sure that our scripting engine can just do that by running external actions. So that's about it. That's what's on the control side. Again, this all can be done without additional infrastructure. This is why I'm not really going to show you the installation of deviceTRUST and the rollout and all this. First, this would all be covered with Liquit, of course. And second, all the software components are just next finish, and we're good to go installations. So we're just going to dive into the demo after the architecture slide. These are the three types of architecture that deviceTRUST supports. And we're actually going to deal with all three of them in the demo. So digital workspace, again, can happen in three situations from our perspective. The first one is a fat client. So just imagine you're giving your users fat clients, Windows 10 machines, and you want to control the digital workspace that sits on those laptops. So deviceTRUST is running in those machines. Our so-called agent software, our active software, is on those machines. Those machines are company managed, and you want to control what's inside those machines. So user, again, sits at home, everything is available, user moves to a cafe, you don't want SAP to be startable again. Something like this. We're going to see this later. Then remoting and desktop as a service solutions, the middle one. This is what AVD would look like, or Citrix or VMware solutions or whatever you have. This is where a user is using a device of some kind. This can be, of course, a Windows machine. This can be a Linux machine, a IGIL device, a macOS machine, and all those client machines that are out there. And this user now accesses your digital workspace that you provide, be it in the cloud or be it in your on-premise data center, where it's accessible via some published desktops or published applications. In the case of AVD, of course, this would be your AVD machines running inside Microsoft Azure. Our agent would now sit inside that AVD machine because that AVD machine will be controlled. And on those clients where the user actually sits on, there will be something called our client extension. Again, just click finish. User is not going to see that client extension. It's just a DLL that's registered for the RDP client, for the workspace app, whatever is used to access that digital workspace. And the communication flow is through the remoting protocol. So if your RDP session, if your AVD RDP session is established, the agent will be able to connect to the client and ask that client for information. Going to see that later as well. And the next one, the last one, is our cloud or software as a service idea, which we are just getting started with, which means that there is something running in the cloud. and it needs to be controlled as well, right? You might not only want to control local applications, but you might also want to control applications that are just natively SaaS. And we are in the process of expanding deviceTRUST's capability to those applications as well. We have a implementation for Azure Conditional Access that can, of course, also be combined with your AVD environment. And we're going to see this in a bit as well. So these are the three situations. We're going to focus on the middle one because we're talking AVD today. And this is how simple deviceTRUST works, right? So we have the two software components on the machine. So the client extension, if we have a remoting scenario, we have the agent that actually controls something. And we do have a management console. And the management console can be installed somewhere. It's just a place where you will control, where you will configure what's being controlled with deviceTRUST. These are the three software components. There's nothing more. There is no changes to your Active Directory. There's no changes to whatever. You don't need any ADMXs. That's about it. Okay, this slide says live demo, so I'm switching over. And you should be able to see a machine now. Now, what I'm going to do now is to show you a few functions of deviceTRUST, about what deviceTRUST can do, what you can achieve using the product. And I will start with a very simple demonstration of our remoting capability, so to say. So what I have here is a FAT client. This is just an Azure AD registered FAT client. It could be anything. It's not of relevance for now. Later it will be relevant, but it's not now. And this client does have access to an AVD desktop, which is that one. So my user uses that one. It might be a company-owned device. It might not be. It's important to recognize that this is a company-owned desktop. This is our digital workspace, the one that the user is actually working in, and the one that we are going to control for now. I have something more, which is the deviceTRUST demo tool. The deviceTRUST demo tool is just a little tool that supports my stories, so to say. So I'm going to show you the three categories: conditional access, conditional application access, and conditional configuration with this AVD demo. And this tool is just to support my stories. This is not there in reality, and I'm going to show you real life functions later as well, of course. Okay, so that's the setting. My user sits on this machine. This is considered our client. Let it be the FAT client that the user has at home. And the user does access AVD, which is this machine, and this machine needs to be controlled. So everything is up and running now. The user can start the applications, like WordPad or whatever the user wants to use, and this is all good. Now, signing out my user, and my first demonstration, my first use case will be a security-related use case. We call it the security state, which means that whatever information you want to gather about the device could be security related. You could, for example, say, well, for access to our AVD environment, we want those devices to, we don't really care about if they're company managed, but if they're not company managed, they should at least have a up-to-date Windows operating system, or let it be a Mac operating system, or maybe even a Linux operating system, but they should be up to date. They should have a working and active firewall. They should have working and up-to-date antivirus. Their local hard disk needs to be encrypted, and they need to be connected, for example, to a encrypted Wi-Fi or to a cable. Whatever suits your security needs and compliance needs, we can evaluate, and we can get the so-called security state from the device during logon with this. My device was now protected. I'm just switching to unprotected, and we're going to see what this means for our user. So I'm restarting my my AVD session here, just typing in my PIN, and it will take a few seconds for the user to be logged on. Just quickly resizing. And we're not going to log off and on that often, so apologies for the delay that it has now, but it's my AVD machines are a bit sluggish if it comes to that. So it will take a moment for the user to log on, but what we're going to see now is that once the user has logged on, and we're going to speak about why the user needs to log on first in a minute, is that deviceTRUST is kicking in, and deviceTRUST is now giving the user a lock screen saying, hey user, you can't log in because your security state is wrong. Your firewall has been deactivated. You can't access that digital workspace now. You can click sign out. You can click contact help desk, which will on your local device open some website. Could be the help desk website or something that helps the user actually. But in the end, you can't access your session. You can't access AVD now because something is wrong. And that something at the moment is your firewall is deactivated. Now you can give the user any type of information in this screen. You can, of course, configure this information based on the user's language and all this. You can give detailed information. You can just give, well, you can't log on here now. Please contact help us or something. So the information you give to the user, the information that's on those buttons, what those buttons do, can always be configured. So everything is up to you to configure. But that's the very basic use case for the user to be not able to access the environment if a security configuration is wrong. Clicking sign out here, I'll be properly signed out from the AVD session, just to make sure that in case of something is wrong, you won't have all those running sessions, of course. Switching back to protected, and I'm logging on again. Will take a second just to show you that we'll but now, of course, be able to log on again. I might have called the help desk telling them, hey, this AVD tells me my firewall is off, what I'm going to do. And help desk just told me to repower my machine, to reboot my machine. And now I'm good to go again, as if nothing has happened before. So this is what's going to happen now. Again, we'll take a few seconds for the machine. And we're good to go again. So that's a very, very basic use case regarding conditional access. Just getting some information from the device, if it's security related, or if you rather would say it's I don't know, location related. So for example, we do have customers that control access to AVD based on the country the user sits in. Going to the country information thing later, but that's the very basic conditional access thing. Now, logging off once more, and afterwards I'm staying in the session, promised, because we are going to the, might be twice actually. I spoke about the software components that need to be installed for deviceTRUST to function properly. Inside the AVD session, which is controlled by IT, of course, that's being installed by, I don't know what function you have behind it, but you will install the deviceTRUST agent in there. Liquit might install it, of course. It will be in your image. So this section is, of course, covered. But if you're, for example, dealing with bring your own devices, you might not be able to control, you will not be able to control the software that's on those devices. Now, for the use of deviceTRUST, this does not mean that nothing will work, that the user will not be able to connect. As with everything in deviceTRUST, what happens if some information is detected is up to you. The installation of a client not being found, or the information we have not found a client on the existing device, is an information and a context information. And how you react to that information is always up to you. So you could, for example, say, now we're not letting any users inside AVD if this client is not to be found, because we cannot get all the security information now. But you could also say, well, we do have an implementation phase, and during that implementation phase, we're just giving the user a pop-up inside the session saying, the user, your deviceTRUST client is not available. Please install it. There is a link. You can click contact help desk. You can also click copy URL and get it right to your clipboard. Just type it in there, and there's the download of the deviceTRUST client. You can get it for Apple, macOS, for Windows, and for Ubuntu. There will be a instruction on how to install it step by step. This is just next, finish, and you're good to go. which makes it easier for them users to decide. You could also say, well, the user, that's fine. You might not want to install deviceTRUST client at all. If you don't want that, we are not going to allow you to install to use this and that application, for example. If you want to use that application, happy to install the client or get a managed device or get in the car and drive to the company's building and work on your computer, whatever you like. So again, your reaction to some information being gathered, to some property information or context information, is up to you. So the user could just click OK here now and then work as if nothing happened. Again, this is now the last logoff, I promise. Configuring vector protected. And now another idea of controlling or showing conditional access is recognizing removable drives that are attached to machines. So let's say the user is using a company device or even not a company device, but there is some USB stick attached to that machine that you don't know, that you do not recognize, that you have not listed as company device, that's not encrypted properly or something. And you might just not want those users to access AVD as long as there is a removable drive attached that you don't know. Very simple. If that's being recognized, again, logging on, deviceTRUST is going to recognize this. We're going to see, well, there's a stick or a hard disk or whatever, a mobile phone attached to the user's device that's not allowed, and we're going to react to it. Now, in this example, we're again reacting with a lock screen. But you could also say, if you're looking at FAT clients, we're going to deny access to removable drives. We're going to send an email to help desk saying, hey, Sven tried to access, he had this USB stick. What is happening? Oh, I had this earlier. That's my FAT client shutting down. Yeah, we'll be there in a minute. So you can combine all those functions. So you could say, we're sending an email to help desk to have all the information, which USB stick, and if I'm on the phone contacting help desk, then they could allow this stick or not allow this stick. So again, how you react to this information is absolutely up to you. And yeah, so now we're actually getting to the part where we can demonstrate the differences between deviceTRUST and other conditional access or conditional situations, conditional solutions. Because what you recognized earlier was that we work inside the user session. So the user is always logged on. You get a proper Windows session inside AVD. And afterwards, the session is locked or the control is executed and all this. And there is a reason for this, because we want all those things, all the controls that we can actually execute as deviceTRUST. So may it be conditional access, may it be application control and such. We want all those to be able to run dynamically during session runtime. For us, that means that the session lock you're going to see now will not only happen on logon or reconnect. And if we're talking the USB stick use case, it would actually be quite insufficient to only know on logon if there is a USB stick inside that machine. But you would also want to know that during session runtime. So if the user now sees that information, you're giving the user information, hey, there is a USB drive plugged into your device. We do not know it. You're not allowed to use this. You're executing those controls. You're blocking the screen. You're sending emails. You're locking access to the removable drive API and such. The user understands that and recognizes, yeah, well, there's my private stick in there. I'm just going to unplug it. And in that very second, we are going to roll back the control. So the user is actually gaining access to the session directly. And that, of course, goes for everything we do. So the user could be working in the session, plugging something in, access is directly locked, plugging something out again, and access is granted again. And this is what differs deviceTRUST between, and well, in addition to those couples of hundreds of information we can get, the dynamic approach is what differs deviceTRUST from other solutions. So whatever we can do, whatever information we want to get, and whatever control we want to execute, we can do during session runtime, anytime, instantly. So stick in, session log, stick out, session can continue. And this is very powerful because the user can't trick around it. So the user cannot, I don't know, start his session at home and then walk over to the cafe and reconnect to the session and nothing will be blocked. So, but we are going to recognize any changes and react to them. This goes, of course, for security-related things as well. Again, switching to unprotected on my client, and we're going to recognize this, giving the user the information, firewall is deactivated, switching to protected again, and we're good to go. Same thing. Now, this was conditional access, so the very basic kind of function of deviceTRUST. We're now going to conditional application access, and this is where I need to mention that deviceTRUST always works with APIs and functions that are already there. So we do not bring a filter driver, our own filter driver, because we figure that there's already enough functions in the OS, in additional products. We do not really bring or need to bring an additional layer of complexity to the system because everything is already there. So the information we get from APIs that are already there, and the functions we can control, we control on APIs that are also already in those operating systems. Application access for us means that we want to control the applications the user has access to inside the AVD session or inside the session of some kind. And we can do this by using several approaches. The first use case I'm going to talk about is a location-based use case where our user may or not may be in a location that you find okay or find not okay. Let's say the one that I mentioned earlier, I can only access AVD from Germany or from the Netherlands or from Germany and the Netherlands or whatever. And if I move out of this this country, I might not be able to access the session or to access a certain application. We can get the location information from the client, so from the machine the user is using, by different means. We can use the location services from Windows. We can use a whois request to at least get the country. We can, of course, use third-party APIs to get the exact location of the user. It always comes down to the use case and to how much is allowed of information to gather actually in your environment. But you can, with deviceTRUST, of course, get all the location information of your users during access and all the time during usage. So we see different types of usage here. So companies would just want to know if the user is on premises with the device by using a very narrowed down geolocation information combined with Wi-Fi access points and all this. Other companies are using the country information, whatever suits your needs. So again, back to the use case. Our user is in an authorized country, and if the user moves out of the authorized country, we want certain controls to happen. First example is just controlling a web application. That web application is, yes, it's just something that sits somewhere, just a web app. It could be inside your company network, of course, inside Azure, wherever. It could be a RDP target, a SSH target, anything that works with IP and port. And we do now not want to use the user to be able to access this application anymore if the user moves out of our authorized country. Switching the context on my client, we're going to take away the icon from the user. That's not going to stop them from anything, right? So link saved, we're going to get the information from cache. But if I'm now going to refresh the page, we're going to see that internet access is blocked for that certain website. What we did here is we added a Windows Defender firewall policy on that machine for the user to block access to that business web app. So everything that's IP and port based can be controlled with this function. And this is just deviceTRUST adding rules to the Windows Defender firewall and leaving the control and logging and all this to the already there firewall product in the OS. It goes the other way around, of course. So my context is now authorized again, my user moved back, and I'm getting access to my application again. Took a second, you saw that, but now access is granted again. And that's a very basic idea of application control, right? Just IP and port-based applications, whatever this might be. Now, there are, of course, installed applications inside that machine, and they might, of course, be made accessible with Liquit, and Liquit might have controlled which processes you might actually need to start in your certain environment. Now, you might want to add that certain layer of security by controlling the processes based on the information of the context. WordPad, just to be taken as an example application here, it would be your business critical application of some kind, of course. And you might not want that user to be able to access that application in certain circumstances. Now, for application control in Windows, there is already a very good product, which is called Microsoft AppLocker. Microsoft AppLocker has been in the OS for a while. It is a quite solid filter driver. It has its own logging. It's there, but the only thing, the caveat is that it's role-based. So when the user logs on to AVD, if you're using AppLocker, AppLocker will know which applications are required, are allowed for the user, and there is no, so AppLocker cannot take the context into account. What we now do is we kind of make the whole thing dynamic. So if the context now changes, we're first going to realize that the process is still open. We're going to be giving the user an information saying, user, your WordPad is still running. You can't use it anymore because your context changed. We're going to close the process actually, save your work. Otherwise, it's going to be lost because we're actually closing the process. And in the background, we now implemented an AppLocker policy for the user, again, during runtime, to make the user not able to restart that application, and this way prevent the application not only being from started, but also having made sure that it actually was closed and the user cannot access that application anymore. It cannot be presented on the screen anymore because the context has changed. And of course, this works the other way around as well. So I moved back to the authorized country, and I will now be able to restart WordPad again. That does work with other solutions as well. I'm going to talk about this a bit. But first, I'd like to speak about another use case. So the next use case you could imagine for application control or for conditional application access is network related. Mentioned it earlier, actually. So your users might be working from home. They might have a company managed device. They might have a bring your own device. You might have all those security measurements in place to actually access this or that inside AVD. So you might have two-factor authentication, and you might have VPNs and all this in place. But if a user is recognized being in public, for example, information will be displayed on the display, and if someone looks at my display, they can get information, right? I can't address this by any security measurements. So you might want to find some property, some context information that gives you the idea the user is now in public. Now, this could, for example, be the type of Wi-Fi network the machine is connected to. If the users are at home, they're mostly using WPA3 or 2 encrypted Wi-Fis. If they're at work, the same, or they're using cables. But if they're in public, most of the times they will use some hotspot, and those hotspots will be unencrypted or not password protected. So this could give you the indication the user is now in public. Someone could look at the screen, and you might not want to have certain applications being started. My example application here is now Notepad++. We do the same thing here. We change the context. We're going to see the the process control. So we are recognizing Notepad++ is still running, giving the user the information. Again, this is all customizable, of course. We're giving the user the information that the application cannot be accessed anymore, it needs to be closed now. And in the background, we use the MSIX app attach, no, the FSLogix app masking API in that case, to control access to Notepad++. If you know the product, you will recognize, or you will know that in that case, FSLogix app masking will make sure for the user session to actually be not able to actually see that application anymore. The outcome is the same. The user can't start or use the application anymore. It's just using another technology. So that's using FSLogix app masking. deviceTRUST can work with multiple solutions here. Just going to show you that the application is there again, Notepad++. So we can use, for example, AppV, of course. We can deliver our information to other application management systems. And as we're talking AVD today, we can also use MSIX app attach, of course. So I've got a few applications here. Just going to deconfigure my both use cases here and showing you the start menu, and you will see that there is no Wireshark and there's no VLC here in my start menu. And if I configure my use cases or my situations to be okay, to be connected to secure Wi-Fi, to be in an authorized country, you will now see that new applications will be available, and these have actually been made available using MSIX app attach. So I have my MSIX app attach VHDs on the local machine. They have been staged for the user, but they have not been registered. And we now just use deviceTRUST to register and unregister those MSIX app attach applications to make sure the user can access or not access those applications. Same thing, application can be made available or cannot be made available. You see the application is actually closing as well, of course. And whatever way you choose for application control, we can address it, we can use it, we can take the context information into account, and this way control the applications. Okay. Next thing and last thing is conditional configuration. Going to be a bit quicker here, just to give you an idea of what we also can do, which is, for example, printer management. Let's say you have printers in your AVD sessions of some kind, or you might want to map drives or something. Then we can also do this. So we can also do things that are not that security related, but that could be relevant for your environment as well. Just to give you an idea, so you might have users roaming around with their devices. They might be in different locations. Let's say they're in building this and they're in building that, and they need to print, and you want to set, for example, the default printer based on the location. We can map printers, we can set them as default, we can unmap printers to kind of clean up the user's profile. And you will see that now in this remote session, my printer is going to change if my location changes on the end device. So just a very simple way of managing the printer that the user actually will be using if he or she prints something out. Very basic idea. And then we can also control something like the session idle time, for of course, might be very relevant for your AVD sessions. So you might want to say, well, our AVD sessions need to be secure, of course. So they might need to be locked after 10 minutes of the user not interacting with it. It needs to be password protected, of course. But you might also want to combine the security with user experience here, because if the user's device, so the end device, is configured to suit your needs, to actually lock after 10 minutes with a password protection as well, then you might not want or need to lock the session in addition, because the only thing that happens is the user needing to log in twice on reaccessing the whole thing. So you might want to take the configuration of the user's device into account, and regarding this, lock or not lock the session after your given amount of time. You now saw that the session has not been locked without any interaction because my device is secure. I'm switching to false here, so to my device not having a session lock in place. And what we should see now after a few seconds is that my remote session is being locked. So this way we can make sure that the lockout time of a few seconds is kept either on the local device or on the AVD session, and this way making it secure without the user having to log on twice in certain circumstances. Okay, now this is the very basic function of deviceTRUST. I hope you got a very good idea of what we can do, and I'm going to show you a few things more before we sum up the whole thing. Going to sign out of my AVD session here because we're going over to our FAT client. Now you can take this as a AVD client as well, however it suits your environment. But I just want to show you a few things. I told you earlier that we are extending the functions to SaaS as well. So I do have a client here now that is registered or joined to Azure Active Directory. Doesn't really matter. It can be joined, it can be hybrid, but it's part of the Azure Active Directory. And I'm going to show you this in a second. Here we go. That's my machine. Now, you could use deviceTRUST to, of course, control what's happening on that machine. So everything we saw about application control and session control and all this earlier, you can do on this machine. You can do it in remoting sessions, of course, but now with the latest additions to deviceTRUST, you can also use Azure Conditional Access to control certain things. So let's just say you have that device, it's registered in Azure Active Directory, and there is something that's called the compliant state. And this is something you can build conditional access rules on. So you have Microsoft Conditional Access. It can take this state into account. And this state can, of course, be used by Microsoft Intune. So if your devices are enrolled in Microsoft Intune, Intune can configure the state and just say, I'm compliant, yes, I'm compliant, no. But now this device is not MDM enrolled. It's just a joint device, Azure AD joint device, but it's not enrolled to Intune. So without Intune or without deviceTRUST, you would not have any chance to configure that compliance state. But with deviceTRUST, we now have that possibility. So I'm just popping up an administrative PowerShell here now because I need administrative rights to change the property. Yep. And what I'm going to do is just, I'm switching off my firewall on my local machine. You'll recognize Windows is going to tell me, well, your firewall is off, alarm, alarm. So we're actually using the real firewall property here now. And what we are going to do now as deviceTRUST is we're going to manipulate this compliant state information in the Azure AD. So the function that Intune does have, we can also use, and we can change that compliance state. And now you can use the information that you have from our context information to configure your Microsoft Azure Conditional Access rules based on that. So you could, for example, say, well, if that firewall is off on my joint machines, and this can again also be AVD machines, of course, if that firewall is off, our users cannot log into, let's just say, Office 365. So you just get the screen, you cannot access this right now. This, of course, is also valid for subscribing to AVD sessions. So you could, for example, say, subscribing here now using this is again the same user, Sven J -demo, -demo. You cannot access this right now. And this all happens because deviceTRUST now used that information while the firewall is off, transported it to Azure Active Directory, and configured this compliance state to be no. The control is now done by Azure Conditional Access. And this gives us the chance to use our context information dynamically, of course, provide it into Azure and have Azure run the controls that Azure can run. Again, this is not deviceTRUST controlling access to AVD or to Office 365. This is now Azure Conditional Access, making sure that the users cannot access certain SaaS applications under certain circumstances. Works the other way around, of course. So I'm now switching on my firewall again. And if I now try to log on to Office 365 with the same machine, we're now getting access. We're just not going to see anything because I don't have any licenses, but you see my user is now logged into Office because Azure Conditional Access allowed the access. Same goes, of course, for AVD now. I can now register again with the same user and everything is good to go. And this gives you the chance to actually control all the contents your users have. So you have your local applications on those machines. You have remoting applications inside AVD, for example, and you have those SaaS applications at this moment concentrating on Azure Conditional Access, but we're going to extend this functionality in the near future. But this is the first step to combine all those three scenarios. Two more things. I'd like to show you the reporting part of deviceTRUST. So we do not have a reporting engine built in because, again, we feel that there are already very good solutions for reporting out there on the market. We do not really need to deliver our own. And one of those solutions is Splunk. So what you can do is you can, on every action that we do, on every information you get, you do not have to, you can send it, for example, to Splunk. And there you can run your dashboards displaying your information. Now I have prepared a dashboard that gets something that we call a status report. And that will just use the information that deviceTRUST can gather, display them as pie charts or whatever charts you want to do, have a list of those informations, and you can now use that information for certain means. You could, for example, say, well, I need security related information. I have configured my security state. On every log on, the security state of the devices is considered or is collected. And now you might want your help desk to proactively go back to the users and say, well, you have an unsecure device. I have the information why this happened. So for example, you could click unprotected here, filter for the unprotected data, get the information, what OS it is and all those things. And use that data to get back to the users and say, hey, your device was unprotected. I'm going to help you with, I don't know, updating your software, installing your antivirus and all this. Whatever you use that report for. Or you could just say, we have a report that states the information. Sven had an unprotected device. He tried to access AVD. We blocked him because his firewall was off at this date, at this time, and so on. So you could actually use it for security reporting as well, of course. Just to give you an idea that all the information we get can be sent to a log system, Splunk, Elk Stack, Azure Log Analytics of some kind for you to support your use cases, to generate reports and to do all this. So, but it does not need to, of course. So again, we do not store any data if you don't want to. We do not collect any data if you don't want to. Everything that's being collected or stored or sent to somewhere needs to be configured by you. Now, I want to show you just very briefly how the configuration of deviceTRUST looks. Just to give you an idea, because I think I mentioned very many use cases with very many properties and all the things we can do, and it can be quite a lot and confusing, maybe if you do not really see how the whole thing is configured. Now, for deviceTRUST, you have a few chances, a few ways to configure the whole thing. All the configuration is being done inside the deviceTRUST console. So again, this is just an application that you installed somewhere. And if you just run it, it will look like this. It will just be a console. And you will find the concept of context and actions inside. There are a few wizards in here. We're not going to cover them here now. But you will find the concept of context and actions here. And if you just pop up that console somewhere on a machine, it will give you the information that it's now writing to the local computer policy. So getting back to the AVD use case, you would need to install the console inside that AVD machine in every machine and configure it locally. Well, that's not really suitable. So there are, of course, other ways to configure. One is you just create a configuration, export it to disk. You will get a JSON file that you can bring now to your machines, to your AVD machines, for example, where our process is running, and have that machine configured by just reading that configuration file. You can distribute that configuration file via Intune or via your usual software deployment method, whatever is to your likes. And this is the next method. Now, if you have Active Directory joined devices, it's even easier because our console can run as an MMC snap-in. So if you have a machine, an administrative machine, in my case, it's a domain controller, it doesn't matter at all. It can be 10 machines, it can be just one. If you have one machine where there is group policy management and there's the deviceTRUST console, then we will be there as an MMC snap-in. You can just create a GPO and have that console in there. And what is going to happen now is that if you make some configuration, that configuration is stored inside the GPO and distributed to your machines, to your AVD machines, by the normal GPO means. So all the properties that are relevant to GPO are relevant here as well. Storing the information, bringing them out, updating GPOs will update the configuration as well and such. So we are using the administrative tools that you already have, be it local configuration, file-based configuration, or GPO, just to make things even more simple. And now, as last, I would just like to show you how to configure one of those use cases we spoke about earlier. And I'm going to take it quite simple. What I'm going to do is just use the security-related use case. We have something inside our console that comes just right after installing, which is called templates. So to make it a bit easier getting started with deviceTRUST, we have templates inside. You can just find them here. So import templates, and then you will find use cases there. You can import use cases with context and actions. We have building blocks that are separate contexts and separate actions. You can divide between remoting scenarios and fed client scenarios. We are talking AVD today, so we are remoting. And I'd like now to just open up a building block and check for the security state. Should be somewhere, security state. And I'm just going to import the template, just to show you how easy and straightforward the whole thing is to configure. Now, the first thing, or the only thing that is now available in the console is a so-called context. And the context always is the information that you need. You want to get some information, and you configure what information this can be. Now, this information is the security state. Now, context always looks similar a bit, and they always look like those little decision trees, so to say. Now, it has a name, security state, and now what we want to do with the context actually is provide a value. The initial value is called the default value, so to say, and this one is unavailable if you're talking remoting. So security state equals unavailable would be the case if we cannot get any information at all. Now, the white boxes are always checks. So checks that we execute during logon, during reconnect, if something changes dynamically, of course. And we check all those things. And the first thing we check is the deviceTRUST client extension connected to the agent? So can the agent actually, the agent inside AVD, can the agent get any information from the client? If not so, security state will just equal unavailable, and that's the information we have. There's no action now. But if that's the case, so if the deviceTRUST client is connected and we can get information in the case of the security state, the next check will be, is our accessing OS a Windows OS system? Because we need to differ the different OSs because they can deliver information from different APIs, right? So first check, is it a Windows OS? If so, is the Windows Defender firewall active? Is Windows Defender real-time antivirus protection active and such? And if so, protected will be the value. So security state will equal protected, just an information. If not, we're going to go up and right. We're going to get information from the Action Center. Again, antivirus, firewall, signature states, and all this, whatever you need to configure, and the value will be protected or anything that you might want to type in here. It's just text fields. You might want to add, for example, the check for operating systems to be up to date. So you could just click the plus and say remote Windows devices, because we're looking at Windows devices here, Windows update, and say enabled equals true. And this is how easy it is to add your property, your requirements to such security state or to such context. It's just a matter of finding the right information and then translating it to those things. Now, if that's not true, or if we are not a Windows device, then we might, for example, be a macOS device. So again, up and right, are we a macOS device? Is our firewall on? Is our antivirus active? All good, then protected. If not, going to the right. Now you might have IGIL clients in your system accessing your AVD sessions. You might want to check if those IGILs are controlled by your UMS server, if the UMS server is providing the right certificate. In that case, you could consider an IGIL secure as well, for example. Or you might use ELUX machines as well. So whatever remote OS is being recognized, we can get the protected information. Or if that does not meet, we can fall back to unprotected. Now, security state can be protected, unprotected, or unavailable, right? If that's not suitable for you, so if you're only using Windows devices as clients in your environment, you can of course delete all this and only have a much simpler context here. So now, if I roll out this configuration on every access, deviceTRUST will recognize, is my device secure or not? There's nothing being done at the moment. So what I have to do now is create an action and let's just say session control, for example, and then say security state to give you the information, or to just display the information what you're going to do here. First thing we need to do is configure trigger, and trigger is the configuration when deviceTRUST needs to act. You could have deviceTRUST act on logon, on reconnect, on log off, on all those things. And we might want to add context change here as well to add the dynamic aspect, so to act during session runtime. The next thing you need to configure is the context information you want to look at, which is security state. We only have one at the moment. And you want to do something if it's maybe unprotected, or if, let's just say unprotected. And what you could do then, just to have a very simple control, is say deny access. Just say access denied. Your device is not protected. Configure the session timeouts and all this, and you're good to go. This is the whole configuration you would need to recognize if a machine is secure or is not secure. That's about it. If you want to recognize other outcomes of security state, for example, unavailable, which is the case if no deviceTRUST client is there, you can also, of course, double this and say you have no DT client installed. Again, you can extend this to the downloads information and all this, just to give you an idea of how simple the configuration is. And I think, oh, that's an hour. I did not really recognize that it was too long. Sorry for that. So yeah, that's about how the whole device trust thing works, I hope you got an idea of what it can do for AVD, for all those scenarios that you might have. That, and I also hope that I kind of made clear that it's not that complicated to configure it. So that we actually aim to address the simplicity of things. And yes, thank you very much for listening. So this, again, this is me. Told you we're going to have a bit of call to action in the end. So if you have questions about deviceTRUST, please contact me. I'm available on Twitter. I'm available via email, of course. You can find me on Slack as well. You can get a community license on devicetrust.com/community, which gives you a 12-month unlimited function of deviceTRUST. And yeah, I'm always happy to get feedback, to get requests from you. And I think, of course, the same goes for Nico, right?
Sure, absolutely. So if you want to have a Liquit environment, please reach out to me. I will send a follow-up email. You can get your Liquit license, of course, also for free to play around with it. As a follow-up, I would recommend the full Liquit training because it will take you roughly 6 hours to learn all the buttons and the little pieces in there. But if you have any questions, just reach out. The same thing just for me, Twitter, LinkedIn, email, phone. Feel free to reach out if you have any further questions. And of course, with that, also Sven, thanks for learning me all about deviceTRUST. There's actually a couple of things new for me too, so thanks for that. And if there are any questions, just let me know. Now I don't see nothing in the chat just yet, but somehow it doesn't work for me. So there was one question from Matthijs. Is it re-evaluated during the session as well? So if a user mid-session disables the firewall, for example, does it kick the user? So I think this one is for you, Sven.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for the question. Yeah, so absolutely, everything that we recognize is always, if you want to, of course, again, always recognized anytime during session runtime, during log on, during log off. You can actually configure when things are evaluated, and if you configure things to be evaluated during session runtime, it will be recognized immediately, and we will act immediately as well. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And Matthijs already said it was already answered during your session,
okay.
But I saw just the question a little bit late, so sorry for that. So if there are no further questions, we would like to close the session. We would like to thank you for your attendance. And yet again, if you have any questions, or if you just want to play around with one of our solutions, or both, preferably, of course, feel free to reach out. Thanks for today, and I hope you have a good day for the rest. Thanks, bye.
Have a good day. Thank you. Bye.